I have returned. I'm the Nerd King from Band League, and it's time for another metagame analysis. So, it's week 9, and things got really interesting in Standard. Grand Prix Denver and Grand Prix Madrid were the two big events that happened this weekend. And I don't know about you guys out there, but personally, I was expecting just another basic weekend. Green, Black Delirium, White, Blue Flash, um, vehicles, maybe a little of some other deck. But that is not what happened. We are in a whole different world during this last month of Standard play. White, Blue Flash is still really big, but Green, Black Delirium has plummeted, especially in GP Denver. It helped a lot when I looked at Madrid. Green Black Delirium was a little more prevalent, but Denver was almost nothing. Just so much hate for Delirium there. And I think the big reason for this is this week, a new iteration on the Aetherworks deck came out. It was vaguely known about before the GP, but it's that giant 22.7 over there, just slightly smaller than the White Blue Flash. And it crushes Green Black Delirium really hard. It's just a totally unfavorable matchup. And White Blue Flash isn't great either, though that's easier to deal with, I suppose. But with these changes, we are in a different world. Another big deck that came out this weekend was White X Humans. So White Black Humans was the biggest one. It's the little sliver over there. But we had a lot of other humans decks. Like, basically, if you name a second color, there was a human deck for it. Also, red-green energy in Madrid was incredibly prevalent. There was actually a ton of it. The only reason it's so small was because there was only one in GP Denver. But still, just so much change, guys. The format has turned on its head, and honestly, I'm not really a believer in Delirium. So, I briefly mentioned that the Aetherworks deck changed a little earlier. But to be more specific, Aetherworks has evolved in a pretty big way. Essentially, if you take the old Aetherworks decks from like Pro Tour Kaladesh and mix it with Green Black Delirium, you get the current Aetherworks decks. And that they bring more power to the table than Green Black Delirium, but also have the, I guess, grittiness to hold Green Black Delirium back. And so these two archetypes have come together and made something much stronger. I haven't actually gotten to see how it pairs up against Blue White Flash. Well, I guess we'll find out eventually. But still, it's going to really change the format, and I'll be interested to see what people come up to beat this deck. Now, there was another deck that was a big surprise this weekend. Panharmonicon proved to be a reasonably powerful deck. I believe it had 3 appearances in the top 64 of the 2 events, which isn't much, but at least one of those appearances was a top 8. So I thought I'd look a little more into the deck. So, this deck, it uses Panharmonicon and basically a lot of enter the battlefield triggers, enabling things like Cloud Blazer and a few other enter the battlefield trigger type effects. And it also has things like Eldrazi Displacer to flicker. It's basically a bounced flicker deck. And I hope it does really well. I don't know if it will or not, but the potential is there. Here, let me show you guys real quickly the whole deck list. I couldn't copy it this time, sadly. it was a little too difficult because the thing was being weird. I'll have to figure that out at another time. But here's the deck. And so it has a lot of really powerful cards. This is essentially the new control deck. It has things like Thought Not Seer, Reflector Mage, Drowner of Hope to bounce. And from the looks of it, though I haven't actually played to be sure, Sky Sovereign is its win condition. So this deck is very, as I said, I'm really hoping it does well, because if it does, that would be great. It would really change the meta even more, and it'd be a fun deck in the meta, which is something we don't generally get to have, but Panharmonicon is just built for fun, and it's doing a lot better than I ever expected it would. Now, moving on from there, there's some other cool things, particularly humans. So, all the different decks gain different things. For example, there's black-white humans, which I'm sorry, I haven't looked too deeply into some of the humans decks, so I might get some of this wrong. But I believe white humans splashes black for things like Shambling Vent and maybe a few things out of the sideboard, like anyway. Then there's red-white humans, which gets like Needle Spires and maybe Depola, though no, probably not. But like each iteration has some slightly different things to it. I think white-black humans will continue to be the best. Its performance here goes to show that. But it could change. I even saw a mono white list, which I think is probably worse because it doesn't get access to the man lands. But it could prove to be more effective than I think. Alright guys, so the upcoming events. We have Standard Super IQ on December 17th. And that's in like Kissimmee, Florida. And that's it. Yeah, for the next 2 weeks, there's honestly not that much happening. I think it's because of Christmas, like a lot of employees are on break from various companies like Star City Games and Wizards, and there's a lot of the organizers are short-handed and stuff right now. So I think there's just not going to be much to do. There are some local events you could look into, like PPTQs and smaller scale qualifiers, non-super IQs. But other than that, it's gonna be pretty boring in Magic these next couple weeks. It's kind of a break period, which is a little bit sad, given that right before it, the standard metagame just got really interesting, and it'd be really cool to play. Another thing that is coming up, if you're inspired by any of these decks, is the last week of Standard Showdown. It's a free tournament where you get a mini pack with only rares, mythics, and a promo. It's like 3 cards. And yeah, that's about it. Now, I wanted to make a bit of an announcement. I'm gonna be making, because I'm a lot freer during Christmas break, I'm gonna be making more videos. So it's like almost a month long. I'm gonna be making weekly videos. Now, the metagame analysis is still going to be every other week, because unfortunately there's not that much to talk about if I make the metagame analysis weekly. Like next week there's not going to be all that much to talk about as it is. So instead I'm going to do something else. I might do some Twitch streaming even. We'll see. If you want to check out my Twitch channel, it's nerdkjng spelled with a J. It should be pretty cool. I might stream with Hackdrox, my friend who did a recent video with me. And yeah, that's about it, guys. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you later.